The gold standard, seen dimly through the customary haze of old history, civics, and economics courses. It's perceived as something Franklin Roosevelt tinkered with in 1933 and Richard Nixon further modified in 1971. But in these days, when inflation seems all but impossible to control, some look to the gold standard as the dawn of an old idea. Bruce Morton has the story.
Louis Lerman is a New York businessman and financier on vacation in Montana this week, a leader in the movement to put the United States back on the gold standard.
The gold standard anchors the value of money in the future. It makes savings worthwhile holding because one knows with a gold dollar that the value of the dollar in the future will be similar to today.
Henry Wallach is a governor of the Federal Reserve Board. He disagrees.
I think we ought to be the captains of our ship and we ought to handle our affairs right. There is this thought somewhere you need an anchor because discipline isn't adequate, but this anchor can drag you God knows where.
The old Economics 1 description of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. The supply-side economists in the Reagan administration think his tax cuts will spur savings and investment, produce more goods. But they also want to do something about the other half, too much money. And some argue that the way to restrain the money supply is to tie that money to gold. If the dollar is backed by gold, they argue, that limits the amount of dollars the government can print. And the system is self-adjusting. If the government prints too much money, demand for gold will go up, and the government will change its ways. If there's too little money in the economy, demand for money will go up, a signal to change policy again. The gold bugs foresee stability in prices, interest rates, almost heaven on earth.
Obviously, the gold standard is not a panacea, but it surely goes a long way towards solving our monetary and inflationary and interest rate problems.
But when we were on the gold standard in the 19th century, all was not sweetness and light. Remember William Jennings Bryan, who wanted free silver, fuel for an expanding economy.
You shall not press down upon the brow of labor this crown of thorns. You shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of gold.
And there were plenty of booms and busts. One economic service here cites 12 panics and crises between 1815 and 1914.
The gold standard means honest money. It means money you can count on, the value of which in the future will be very much the same as the dollar bill is worth today.
But when the gold standard was in effect, gold prices were fairly stable. Lately, they've jumped all over the lot, from $275 an ounce in mid-1979, for instance, to $850 in January of 1980. So wild, critics say, that the gold standard couldn't be used today. Almost everyone agrees that the United States has been on a kind of monetary drunk for the past 10 or 15 years, pumping out a lot more money than it should have.
It's now recognized that lack of monetary discipline has led to inadequate performance in the economy.
The gold standard is one solution. Another would be what's called a monetary rule. If production goes up by, say, 3%, then the money supply that year could only go up by 3%.
Now, this would be through a rule imposed upon Federal Reserve action and presumably policed by the United States Congress.
It's going to be a good many years before the people and the government of this country accept a gold standard. So I would suspect that we will have even more chaotic conditions in the marketplace than we have today before they really seek out the only answer we have. So I suspect maybe 4 or 5, maybe even 10 years before we have a sound, honest currency again.
The congressman is probably right. The gold standard is not just around the corner. A congressionally mandated commission on the issue has met once. Its final report is some months off and is unlikely to say back to gold at once. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.